Satnam everyone, Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Welcome to another in our continuing series, Your Miracle Mantra Moment. And as usual, I will begin the program with 11 minutes chanting of Dhandan Ram Das Guru. And for those of you who haven't been before, I like to remind you that there are a couple of different ways you can do this meditation. You can simply listen and meditate silently with your eyes closed, your hands in Gyan Mudra or in the lap, whatever is good for you, keeping your spine straight. Now, there is another way that I often remind people, and that is using a mudra where you take your right thumb up and you wrap your left hand around it like a fist. And then you take your right fingers and come up around the back of your left hand. And you simply hold that at your heart center with your elbows relaxed at your sides, keeping the spine straight and the chin is tucked in. In either of these positions, you can be silent or you can chant if you know the mantra, the shabad. So it's entirely up to you. So I hope you'll join in, and we will begin now. And then after we have finished the chanting for 11 minutes, then I'll be talking and looking for questions perhaps. So if you have any questions, you can put them in the comments. Also, if you'll be nice enough to let me know where you're from, that's always great. And so after this process, so, this using the mudra like this is a specific meditation to remove your fear of the future. So either way, whether you do it with the mudra or you're just sitting, also there's a part of this process which is really about embodying a prayer within yourself. So allow that perhaps to arrive if you haven't got it in clarity already, but perhaps you already know what your prayer might be during this time. So as we chant, you can hold that as an intention throughout the time that we're chanting. So, and then afterwards, I'm going to talk a little bit about prayer. What is effective prayer? What words can we use? How do we approach it? That kind of thing. So, great. Jinnisiriya Kinniswariya Tanna Tanna Ramata Sukura Tanna Tanna Ramata Sukura Atana Ataho Atolito Atana Ataho Atolito Tera Antana Paramariya Tera Antana Paramariya Tanna Tanna Ramata Sukuna Tanna Tanna Ramata Sukuna Jinnisiriya Kinniswariya Jinnisiriya Kinniswariya Tanna Tanna Ramata Sukuna Tanna Tanna Ramata Sukuna Kinni tu Seviya Paka Kinni tu Seviya Paka Sekuda Par Upariya Sekuda Par Upariya Tanna Tanna Ramata Sukuna Tanna Tanna Ramata Sukuna Jinnisiriya Kinniswariya Jinnisiriya Kinniswariya Tanna Tanna Ramata Sukuna Tanna Tanna Ramata Sukuna Nabno Makama Kama Nabno Makama Kama Markande Tundas Paramariya Markande Tundas Paramariya Tanna Tanna Ramata Sukuna Tanna Tanna Ramata Sukuna Jinnisiriya Kinniswariya Jinnisiriya Kinniswariya Tanna Tanna Ramata Sukuna Tanna Tanna Ramata Sukuna Tanna Sutera Tanna hai Tanna Sutera Tanna hai Sach Tera Paramariya Sach Tera Paramariya Tanna Tanna Ramata Sukuna Tanna Tanna Ramata Sukuna Jinnisiriya Kinniswariya Jinnisiriya Kinniswariya Tanna Tanna Ramata Sukuna Tanna Tanna Ramata Sukuna Nanak नानक तू लेना तू है नानक तू लेना तू है गुर अमर तू विचारिया गुर अमर तू विचारिया गुर दिता मन सदारिया गुर दिता मन सदारिया धन धन रमदास गुर धन धन रमदास गुर जिन सिया किन समारिया जिन सिया किन समारिया धन धन रमदास गुर धन धन रमदास गुर धन धन रमदास गुर Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. So we reach the portion of our time together when I'm going to bring the laptop a little closer to me so that I can see who's with us and where you're from and perhaps some questions. So let's bring this a little closer. Okay. So I see right away we have some of our regulars here. Hi Luke from France, welcome. And HS Modi, right? And Gulzan and Kiran Deep. Looks like Kiran Deep, that's what she's saying. To create miracles, make the impossible become possible. Ragram Kali, yeah. So this is just quoting the Gurbani, and that this was composed by two musicians, Balwand and Sata. And so I've spoken about the origin of this Shabad, this mantra before. So if you want to go back to some of the earliest, about 2.5 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, you'll find, you'll find that story. And hi, Mina from Estonia, welcome, and Laura, and Baldev Singh, Satkriyakar, one of our regulars from Ecuador. So on Tuesday, when I had this program this week, I was talking about a few things, and somewhere along the road I mentioned something about prayer or ardas, and so someone put in the comments that they'd like to hear more about understanding prayer. So in the Sikh tradition, we have ardas, which is usually a public prayer shared with any group that is gathered. But you can also do your own private, personal ardas, not a problem. But it's an interesting thing to talk about, the two different ways that we pray in our tradition. And so I just want to start a little bit just to talk about the public methodology that we use with ardas. And if you have been to a Sikh Gurdwara, maybe for a program, you'll probably remember that at the end of the program, everybody stands up and we say this ardas, where one person's voice is meant to represent everyone there. And so this is a special time for that that person, who is the person reciting the Ardas, to be particularly connected, to understand what's going on in that community so that they can represent the feelings, the sentiments, the concerns, and all of that in the prayer that he says or she says aloud. And there's a great series that I've helped to produce of videos on YouTube under the Sikh Dharma International YouTube channel called How To Videos. And in that series, there's one of the videos about how to recite Ardas. So for more information about how to do that, you can check out that video on YouTube. But now I want to talk about prayer more generally, both personal and public. Because what is prayer? Who's saying the prayer? Who's listening to the prayer? And so while we are using this mantra, this shabad, to be prayerful during this time of COVID-19 concern, that we are, some of us may be feeling like in the moment that we're chanting these words, Dandan Ramdaskun, that we feel connected to a prayerful space within ourselves. And that's an important feeling to understand, to get to that place where you feel like you're opening to being prayerful. But I know some of you want more words to understand what that could be, so I'll keep talking. You know, many of us have heard prayers by ministers, preachers, whatever, where people have said them aloud, or perhaps you've seen people praying in a movie, or perhaps you have experienced praying yourself. And many times we kind of, as humanity, especially coming out of the Piscean age, we tend to default to a dualistic way of praying. What do I mean by dualistic? Well, so Guru Nanak, as he came out of the river after experiencing a 3-day long samadhi experience of complete immersion into the divine, as he came back into regular life, the words that he was saying, Ek Onkar, and they form the very beginning of what we call the Mool Mantra, which is at the beginning of Japji Sahib, which is at the beginning of the Sri Guru Granth Sahib. So it has a great deal of significance, these 3 short words, Ik Onkar. And what they are is, Ik is one, Om is the becoming, the universal creative force, and Kar is the doing of that. So Ek Onkar is that oneness coming into being in the universe, and the experience of that for each of us. So Guru Nanak's message also, as he came out of the river, was Nako Hindu, Nako Muslim. There is no Hindu, there is no Muslim, because that was the culture that he was in, that there were these 2 different paths, spiritual paths at the time. And he was saying, there's no difference. You know, there is only one essence, one divine, that flows through all things, through all beings, all people, all spiritual paths. They all lead to the same place. And so he was saying there's no need to judge or separate that humanity is one experience. And so as we think about connecting to prayer, especially in this age where we're moving into a more Aquarian way of seeing things, more Aquarian meaning less dualistic, more embracing the oneness of all. So no longer is God somewhere out there or up on a cloud. No longer is God separate from our experience of self. So as we start to think about that with our prayer, then we realize that in the moment of prayer, it is really the voice that we are speaking with, whether it's aloud or in our mind. That voice is giving energy to an intention within us. That intention comes from the universal mind, the chitta, and that chitta is born out of the oneness of the universe. And so that my voice is actually the manifestation of that divine also. And that if there is an ear listening, that ear is also part of that divine manifestation. And therefore it's, as we speak in prayer, it is God speaking to herself. In other words, there is no need to separate one from the other. We are simply giving energy to those words in a way that creates an intention. We might say in our language of prayer, may there be healing and health for all people at this time around the planet. Because that's really what is going to help maybe more people than anything. So in those few words, we're projecting an intention that something should happen in the universe, in the world. And so our prayer is giving a sort of energetic, it's like pushing a boat out onto the water. It's giving it energy to go out and manifest. Well, how can my words manifest in anything, right? But then we come to understanding that there is a power in words. There is a power in language. There is a power in sound itself. Those of us who have worked with mantras in general may understand that. That as we recite a mantra, it's creating an energetic intention within us, around us, outward. And so if you take that to the next step, the sound current of the mantra, perhaps the meaning of the mantra, creates an energetic impact on the universe, however subtle. Don't discount how that subtlety may still have, like using a fulcrum, it may have quite a lot of power, even though it may feel like one small effort. But we are putting that intention out, putting that energy out to affect the whole in a way that we put it adrift like that boat, like that leaf that we might send adrift out onto a pond or a stream, right? And we may not be able to guide it where it's going, but we are able to give that little push. And those leaves join other leaves, and it becomes a running torrent of energy that can have an impact. So mantra and prayer, they're very linked, they're very tied together. So as we chant Dandan Ramdas Guru, perhaps we are inviting Guru Ramdas to actually give energy to that prayer. Or on a different level, we can say that we are manifesting Guru Ram Das within ourselves to bring that prayer into a more energetic reality, right? So I can go on, but I'm just going to pause for a minute and ask you just if you think you have any particular questions around this idea of prayer, the practice of prayer. Just put them in the so Satkriya is saying she's feeling pretty called, but there's still a desperation from within at this moment to connect with prayer, and that she prays for forgiveness and compassion. Right, so Satkriya, so who is asking and who is granting? You know, the dialogue that is maybe useful in the first step of prayer. Ultimately, we can even let go of that and that see and understand and feel the connection to be in acceptance through compassion. Compassion for the situation that you might be triggered by. Compassion for yourself in that situation. Maybe you could have done things differently. So have compassion. Compassion for other people who may have acted without compassion in that moment. Because you are the manifestation of the divine that can energize that compassion. It doesn't need to come from outside. It just simply needs to be embodied within yourself. And that at that stage, there's no longer a need to seek forgiveness, but rather acceptance. Acceptance of what is, what was, an understanding of how you can be moving forward in that state of understanding. Forgiveness doesn't mean erasing something. It means more about accepting, that maybe there was something that wasn't ideal, but we can learn from that and move on to be next time more understanding, more compassionate, more accepting of the other and of our own weaknesses or lack of clarity. So Pav Singh, welcome, is asking how, in fact I can put it up here, sorry, forgot about I could do this. How do I distinguish from the inner voice and the thoughts? It's a very good question. So this is something that takes time and practice. In your time that you sit and meditate, let's assume that you have a practice. I'm not going to ask that, but assuming that you have some kind of daily practice on the mat, we'll say, you're sitting down at some point in your day and you're making some effort to connect to that inner voice, if you like. So part of that practice will be to find some kind of stillness where the voice of your monkey mind is just allowed to carry on to the side, because the mind is going to keep generating thoughts. And what I'm talking about, this comes from the understanding of the mind through the philosophy of Vedanta, which is an ancient philosophical approach to understanding self and the mind. And so this idea of the mind is continuously providing thoughts comes from Vedanta. So we're going to move the ongoing process of the mind just to the side. Now it sounds easy, but it actually can be a little challenging. So don't be surprised if, as you try, you get quickly distracted back into the thoughts. But in this moment that you're sitting, all those thoughts that the mind is providing you are of a lower priority. You know, anything that's really important, you can address later. So you're not going to miss anything if you just stop paying so much attention. It's like you take the spotlight off the monkey mind and bring it into the space around the monkey mind. Because the monkey mind is going. But there's more to you. There's more to your mind. So allow the light just to shift. So your focus is more on the stillness, what was in darkness perhaps. But you're going to bring light to it and understand that there is part of you that is able to be in that stillness and that quiet and listening. So we call the stillness shunya, but there's another stage where once you establish that state of shunya, then you merge into what's called sunye, where you're able to start listening with a more centered, neutral mind, right? Now, there may not be anything to listen to for a while, and that's fine. Just be in the stillness, be in a place of acceptance with that stillness. But slowly, it's going to arrive, is some voice of your soul, if you like, some statements of intention that resonate so deeply within yourself, to perhaps the oldest part of yourself that you can still recognize, and that those words, those ideas are of a higher magnitude, a higher order of importance than the monkey mind stuff, right? And so, as I say, it could take a while before those kind of thoughts or images or words start to arrive. And by a while, I don't mean a few hours. I don't even necessarily mean a few weeks. It could take months, for some people even longer. But at some point, you will find that space and that voice. And so, it's a practice. It means that you have to listen carefully and just pay attention to what serves you and what doesn't serve you. And slowly, you start to see the trend of thoughts that arrive that aren't taking you in alignment with that deeper voice. They're taking you away from that. So those thoughts, you don't have to pay attention to. Now, I don't mean that you have to live your life in a cave where, you can't act on any thought if it's not aligned with that, the destiny of your soul, we'll call it, that voice. No, of course, you can still have fun, you can have relationships, all of that. But, as you start to want to give more purpose to the direction of your life and find that voice within you, then it's a matter of taking the time at some point in the day to sit down and allow space for that voice to be heard. And then once you've heard and you understand to some extent, then that's time to put that into action. That means getting off the mat and finding ways to empower that in your daily life. Sometimes it means making some change, sometimes maybe not. But, just to be aware, to be cognizant, to carry it with you in some way throughout your normal day, so that you have that little reminder that says, well, you know, I'm actually going to go this way because that's what's going to connect to my soul being fulfilled and engaged, and that's the direction I want to go. You don't have to have the destination, you know, but if you can feel the direction, that's enough. I tell this story of, you know, when you're in a blizzard at night and you're driving, you may not be able to see down the road very far, but slowly, seeing just a few yards ahead, you can actually drive all the way home. So be grateful for the vision that arrives, and don't worry if it's only a little bit at a time. Kirpal Singh, I'm sorry, I don't know much about the National Day of Prayer tool. Or no, two. Is that what you're saying? National Day of Prayer. I'm sorry. I'll try to find out something for next time. Alexandra from Montana, you're welcome. And Jesse is a regular. So I'm going to kind of wrap it up here unless someone has some more questions. And you know, I didn't get very deeply into the topic of prayer. So if some of you would like to follow up in the next session with specific questions around prayer, I'm happy to go further with that. I wanted to let you know, as you see in the ticker along the bottom here, tomorrow my guest will be Hansu Jotsing, who is a young kirtan musician from Germany, and that program is called Home Kirtan and Chat, and he'll play some music. I think he's going to be focusing on the 25th Pauri of Japji Sahib. That's the Pauri that begins Bota Karam Likiya Na Jai. And so he'll be playing that, and then we'll talk a little bit about how that speaks to him or gives him meaning or clarity or purpose or hope or something. And then the following Friday, so next week, Tuesday and Thursday, I'll be back with your Miracle Mantra Moment. But on Friday of next week, then my guest will be Taran Singh. Some of you may know him. He has been doing a lot of teacher training through the years for Kundalini Yoga, and he has been a very important contributor to the growth of the community in Europe over many years, over 4 or 5 decades. He's been very fundamental in those areas, and so we'll talk a little bit about that as well. And he's going to focus on the Mool Mantra, I believe, and talk a little bit about that and play it. So I'm sure that'll be a very interesting time also. So I think I'm going to wrap this up. I appreciate you all joining today. Please like this. Please share it around. We can try to pull a few more people in to see if they find something of interest and informative. And in the last few moments, I'm going to turn off that ticker and just show that. All right. So we also have some programs going to help people who are in need of getting food. So that's playing right now at the bottom of the screen. And if you want to help with that, it's at Sikhs Feed People. So, all right. Thank you all. Blessings. May you stay healthy. May you stay safe. May you stay at home if you can. All right. We'll see you next time. Satnam. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa. Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.